Hello, and welcome to another episode of Casting Views, the general topic podcast that takes a topic each week and casts views. This week, I've got a very, and I'll add another very in there, very special guest with me. I've got Leo Allen from the Voluntary Input. Hi, Leo.
Hello, Dan. I'm afraid you put too many varies on there now. I don't know if I can live up to everyone's expectations, but thanks for having me on.
It was a while since I had you on last. Can't remember if you reached out to me by email or I reached out to you, but I had this specific list of topics, and I thought this one, if I needed to get you on, this one would be perfect for you.
I think you reached out to me, and it's funny because when you did, I was thinking about a lot of the things you were saying you wanted to talk about. So I think I'm always thinking about this stuff, though, because that's just me.
And as always with me, I think I've picked a topic to have you on where you're going to know far more than me. So I reckon 95% of this is going to be you, and 5% will be me just listening. I think.
Now, to be clear, it's all smoke and mirrors. I tend to pass on information from other people because, a lot of times, even with voluntary input, I'm more of a pundit than an expert. I always look to experts for the things that to form my opinions and to pass on things that I think are relevant. I'll just put it that way. I don't claim to be a genius. So.
Well, and I'm neither a pundit nor an expert, but I just like talking about things, and I can talk a lot about a lot of things. So yeah,
I think that's more accurate of me too. Now that you put it that way.
But before we get stuck into it, you well? You keeping well?
Yeah, doing well. Had some bumps along the way. That's life. That's what put voluntary input on hiatus until, we never know what the future holds. I still maintain my website, and I actually have always dabbled in a lot of music, so I still do that. And actually, I have some. If people are interested, we could talk about that later. If people want to go check some of that stuff out too.
I do have a habit of forgetting because I get carried away with the conversation. But yeah, if I don't say it, remind me at the end, and we'll make sure we'll give everything there a plug. Tell you what, before we get stuck into it, let's hear from some friends of both of us actually, and it's the Talking Smack Pod.
Do you love comics, movies, video games, and more? We do too. Join me, Josh Scar, and my cast of colorful co-hosts on Talking Smack. Look for our yellow and red icon on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, and other podcast players.
Right, and we're back. So, Leo, robots. That's the subject this week.
It's funny that the break there was for Talking Smack because Josh Scar, I know he's really big into stuff like this too. So
I haven't told him that. Actually, I think I let them know just before I've come on, so I'll wait to see how many DMs I've got from him having a go at me afterwards. But no, I've got him lined up for 2 episodes. He's got his agenda ready. So, but yeah, robots. And I think when I was saying to you, I probably confused you. I sent you about 10 emails because I was having that inner monologue with myself, but on email to you about. I think nowadays robotics kind of gets intermingled and associated with all like the sciences, doesn't it? So AI as well. And I wasn't sure whether to bring AI in or if you can separate it. But yeah, I'm happy for this conversation to go where you want. But what do you think about that?
Well, I do believe that there is this mistake, and it's not just AI. I think this happens in general with anything that's hot button topic at the moment. It tends to get convoluted with everything else because, to be honest, for the most part, robotics and artificial intelligence are still separate from one another. And the reason why I say that is, for example, robots have actually been around a while. Now, AI has been around a while too, and a lot of people don't realize that. But the people have pretty much gotten comfortable with the use of robots now. I remember before, and I know even people older than me can remember when the whole robotics boom was just being talked about. And just like with AI, there were all these fears, the biggest one being loss of jobs, because especially in auto manufacturing, that's a big segment of, I don't know if it's that big anymore, but it used to be a big segment of the American economy was automobile manufacturing. Well, one of the first thoughts was, hey, we could put robots on the assembly line, and then So of course, a lot of people freaked out. Well, we'll lose our jobs. We'll lose our jobs. What actually happened is, and this is kind of the point of AI as well, is that these robots are doing jobs that either are dangerous for humans or are jobs that people don't really want to do, but are necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did get like a timeline of robots and reference to robots. And like you said, it's been around a while. I think the first literary reference to it was actually in 1900. So that's how long we're talking about
Yeah.
robots or the concept of robots. But I just wanted to pick up what you said up there about, yeah, that I think the number one thing people think about when they think about robots is absolutely job security and a lot of jobs. And it's quite ironic. Last week I did a course, a professional course for work, and it was last refreshed in 2019. So it's a few years old, but it's a set of guidelines rather than it being something specific to the profession. But in it, they discuss the emergence of AI, they're talking about big data, advanced analytics, robot learning, etc. And one of the things they say is that, you know, people should understand it's not about taking jobs away, but giving employees the opportunity to work on more interesting tasks or more complex tasks and let the robots do, or the learning, the algorithms, the AI do the more menial, time consuming stuff.
And that should be the approach. I mean, it's a tool.
Mm.
Um, Robots are tools. So, one thing I always like to do, and we were talking about this just before we started recording, is I like to try to talk people down off the edge. And, people, they just freak out about how, everything, it's always they're going to take over. That's always the fear. Humans have this fear of blank is going to take over. And it was the same thing with robots. The robots are going to take over. And of course, you have the science fiction movies, the robots are taking over, the robots get smart, they decide to rebel against humans, and then they take over.
And
But,
tabloids, right? And
and the
tabloids.
tabloids.
Yeah.
But then I like to remind people that, again, today, right now, as we speak, there are several robots, different types of robots that are just basically part of our society now, and people don't even think about them anymore. So I pulled up a few examples just because, that's just how I am. And I can get you these links of some of the things that I was looking at. So, for example, there's a company called, and I know I'm always pronouncing their name wrong, but I try. They're called Fanuc. It's FANUC America, and they're out of Michigan. And what they do, they manufacture all types of robots. A lot of them, I mean, they're for industry. They're manufacturing robots, and they even have a facility just basically about 5 miles from where I live.
Okay.
And I have a friend that actually works for them. He does a lot of the programming for these robots. And and again, we're going to get back into that fuzzy area of AI and robots, because as long as there have been robots, there has also always been AI. If you gotta think about it conceptually as this: someone writes a program of a robot and tells the robot, "Hey, you pick up a box, you put it over here to the left. You pick up a box, you put it over here to the left," and it's repeated. Now, what if something goes wrong? Well, you have to tell the robot, what do you do if something goes wrong? Or you also have to tell the robot, the box is here and how far is it from here? That's essentially machine learning, AI. It's all the same, but again, just the way humans are. Oh, what if they take over? It's going to start thinking. It's not going to start thinking. It's following a set of instructions that was given to it by humans.
Yeah, and that's how I had it in my head, and yeah, I was waiting to either be corrected or told. But yeah, to me, robot is something that is doing something it's been told to do, rather than it going off and, like you said, conquering the world or plotting to conquer the world behind people's backs.
Right.
Like you said, I think people, we are just inherently programmed, which is an ironic word to use, I guess, for the subject. I think we
Yeah,
are ironically programmed to fear everything, or to push our insecurities onto other things, right? And what better than
absolutely. Yeah.
in inanimate, or whether it is inanimate, but yeah, an inanimate object. It's we put our failings elsewhere, don't we?
Absolutely. And again, there's always, you know, there can be bad things, yes. But again, I always try to highlight the positive to talk people down off the ledge. Another example I have is I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. There's a hospital. It's more like a group called Tri Health. And one thing that they're really known for is medical robots. Now, when you hear that, of course, your mind may wander to like Star Trek. Oh, there's a there's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
robot that's doing
yeah.
medical surgery on me or whatnot. No, it's not that at all. There are doctors who control these apparatuses, and they're robots. And this stuff is amazing. They're doing surgery. They can do. They call it. There's some no cut surgeries they can do using robots.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
just control them with like a little joystick.
Yeah, and look everything else, all the dangerous things like they use for police, like bomb disposal, etc. Those are things that people were doing, but should people be doing them? Or, if something was to go wrong in those scenarios, it's probably better that people aren't involved in that situation. Or could the emotion at the time make a person do it incorrectly?
I mean, you see, we police forces use them. We have military robots, and again,
Mhm.
people now initially when these conversations were had about these robots, the same fears were in place. They're gonna, something bad is gonna happen. But there is a truth about that applies not only to robots but also to AI, and that is, I'm going to say this now. I was going to kind of save this for the end so I could try to sound real smart. But the bottom line truth is people talk about fearing robots, fearing AI, when the truth is, whenever you hear of bad things happening, what is the one constant when there's a bad thing that happens with a robot? And nowadays you hear all these bad things that's going on with AI. For example, like the fake, was it fake Drake and The Weeknd music videos? There's
Yeah, deep fake and
yeah, the deep fakes of, there was one for Jay-Z. There's one for Snoop Dogg I heard the other day. But what's the one constant in those things?
people falling for it or gullible people.
No, the people making them. It's people.
Okay, okay, yeah, yeah.
So the AI isn't evil. The robots aren't evil. It's the people. People are making them do these things. So my fear, I don't have fear of this stuff because I know, personally, I'm more afraid of people than I'm afraid of AI. Let's put it that way. Because the AI can't do anything that a person hasn't told it.
I think you're right. I think people make me fear this technology in a sense of people looking at something often can't see past what they're looking at and just but then that's always been the case with headlines like we mentioned tabloids and to use that term now that I don't like hearing, but fake news, that kind of thing. People, you can't stop people falling or believing things or not doing their own research into things. You'll never stop that. We will always keep pushing the boundaries of what we can achieve, can't we, with technology? And we always should. But yeah, you're right. It needs us. But people will say, but yeah, we'll make them. But then they'll take over and they'll rise up against us. That's the whole thing, like you said, in sci-fi. That's what sci-fi is built on, right? That's the whole history of sci-fi.
It's always the same thing, isn't it? We've made something that we can't control. But
Yeah, I keep saying sorry. I keep saying it in them. Why do we always think that the worst of things? Why these robots? They might want peace. They might want to sort of have a beer with us and play some cards with
right.
us, have a movie night. No, we always have to think they're going to take our jobs. They're gonna murder us. They're going to control. They might just want to have fun.
And it's funny what the message people should walk away from with all those things. Even like in the movie War Games, remember that? Remember the computer, the
Yes, yeah.
Whopper? It wasn't that. The problem was these computers realized that the problem is people. So why don't we look at that first? It's not that the computers are the problem, it's us, like I said from the beginning. We're the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said on another podcast I was on that, and obviously I'm not saying that sort of the advance in robotics or technology hasn't had an effect on workforce in areas, but I do believe it does mean that though we are just adapting and shifting where kind of what workforce is now. But I think we've always had forces acting on it, whether it be economical, political, geographical. I think we as a workforce, and I'll say it's workforce rather than people, have always probably had to adapt what we do. I mean, for a start, when technology came in, there was a whole boom in people being employed for coding, developing.
Yeah.
and working in IT. And so it's just, we will always adapt, won't we?
I mean, you can go back as far as the Industrial Revolution.
Yes,
Jobs
yeah,
were
yeah.
lost, but jobs were gained. There, like you said, there's an adaptation period that has to happen. I mean, even back when, you know, farming was everyone's way of life and everything was done manually. Well, then over time, machines were invented, and then the machines could plow the fields. Now, of course, at first it started with, well, you had to have a horse to pull the machine, but even that was still more efficient and still more helpful, and humans were doing less and less. Well, then it got to the point where, well, we don't need the horses anymore now because now we have the combustion engine that can, be self-contained, and we can drive it and steer it and plow at the same time. And then you fast forward to now. I mean, there are John Deere tractors out there, those big, giant behemoths of things that look like houses on wheels. They can drive themselves with GPS. Now, a person doesn't even really have to be there to farm it in the middle of the night. But again, I still live by that old rule of technology, that technology is created to enhance human life, not to replace it. And I know people say, well, you can't see the future. I don't ever think there's going to be a point where humans won't have to be involved. Yeah, we'll see a point where the robots will be manufacturing more robots. Actually, they're doing that now. But the humans still have to be there to say, this is what we need now. We need this next. Or, and I don't think the robots they're not, the thing is, even AI, it's not deciding to do anything. It's not thinking about anything. It's not making things up. Someone is prompting it, and it's going out to readily available human generated information and just reconstructing it
The company that owns it can always pull the plug on it at any point, right?
at any point, or they can use it for evil. So once again, we're back to square one. The problem is not the AI, the problem is the people behind it.
Yeah,
So
and it's funny, and a couple of things in what you just said. Yeah, I wanted to go back because I was thinking at the time, yeah, did the horses worry when the car came along, and were horses trying to stop people from driving cars?
I always like to
We
think
still have
horses were.
horses.
I think horses were like, oh my gosh, thank God, get them off of my back, literally.
Yeah,
Get
yeah. I
these
mean, we
people
still
off
have
my back.
horses. We still have horses.
Yeah,
And kind of on what you were just saying, I guess it is to be seen if robots and AI continue to proliferate and grow exponentially. It's more what we are going to do in and around that, and what services are going to crop up out of it. I mean, completely different subject for another day, another podcast, but the world is always changing.
yeah,
Sometimes, too fast, maybe not enough. It is going to be, what do we do next? And I think that's the key thing.
yeah,
If you can see the future, brilliant. But if not, we as like I said, we've always gone along for the ride, and we've always had to adapt. We are doing what the AI, we're worried about the AI. We think that that's going to change and learn and do, but that's what we do, right?
yeah. I mean, we have to. And the bottom line is, this stuff isn't going anywhere. And lately, there's been this saying that people like to say in reference to AI is, right now is the worst AI is going to be. So basically it's only going to continue to get better. So instead of fearing it, that's what I don't like. All these headlines about, oh, how terrible this is, what it's going to do to people, how it's going to take over. Blah, blah. No, I think that's the wrong conversation to have. The conversation to have is, once again, who's building this stuff and what are their intentions?
Yeah.
So when Google talks about, hey, we're making this new AI, okay, that's Google, and what are their intentions? And do we have transparency behind these people that are building these things? And what are some checks and balances that can be in place when they start behaving badly? And the truth of the matter is, there's always going to be bad actors. With every new piece of technology, there's no such thing as, oh, it's only for good. Yeah, it was built under good intentions, but someone's going to get a hold of it and do something bad. And like you were talking about, like the deep fake stuff, that's a perfect example of misuse of it. So
I wonder if people's fear of AI is more that it can be in the hands of Joe Public, whereas robotics probably is slightly less. I mean, you can obviously put a robot together, but to do something mass, or mass produce, you can't. You need a company, a corporation, you need funds, whereas AI can be in the hands of anyone.
Maybe years from now, but I don't think the AI that's like readily available to general society, it's not good enough for those fears to be founded. So for example, those deep fakes that were made from like Drake and The Weeknd, that wasn't someone putting in prompts in Chat GPT. There was a lot of work that went into that no one's really talking about. And there takes a lot of resources. There was also a lot of editing that happened. Yeah, it sounds real, but that wasn't something that was just generated in 15 minutes. That took some work and some time. And most people don't have the resources that the people who put that together have available to them. So will it ever be a point where you can be sitting in your bedroom and go, hey, I'm going to make a Snoop Dogg song, and all I got to do is go to this website and put in some lyrics? Who knows? Probably about 50 to 100 years, but I don't think that, yeah, you can't do that right now, so.
And it's interesting because I actually dabbled at time of recording for the first time looking at, I can't remember which one, but one of the AI writing applications. And I got it to try just do a summary of a local football side I like. And it started off really well. And then as it went on, it was mixing that team up with one of our rivals. And I was thinking if I put that out or if somebody was reading that, they wouldn't last very long if
You
in
get
public
ripped
if
to
they were trying
shreds.
to yeah. And it was just amazing. And it's like, it was perfectly formulated, formed and formulated and words. But it was just, yeah, as it went on, it's like it paused, must have taken a couple of drinks and then decided to carry on.
Well, what that shows you is an example of what's true about all of them. And this is another thing that I and other people keep trying to remind people of things. These, the Chat GPTs, the Google Bard, or whatever, they're doing what you could do on your own. You could just Google all that stuff. The amazing part the amazing function that they do have is that conversational, that output they give you. So for example, if you just Google about your favorite team, you're going to get all of these web page results about different things about the team. Well, what these new things are doing is they're actually parsing all that information and just making it conversational for you. So you don't have to look at all the links. It's just trying to compile them all together for you. But when you get those wrong results and those mixtures of information, what that should tell you is that actually someone out there on the internet put some incorrect information out there. Someone else did that, and all it did was it just grabbed it and threw it in the result that it gave you. So, when people talk about misinformation, yeah, misinformation is already out there. There's all kinds of stuff on the internet that's already wrong because people put it out there. There's Wikipedia pages. Now, Wikipedia does a great job of, vetting information. There's volunteers and whatnot that do it, but there's still stuff out there that's just wrong about people. So when these chatbots are scraping for information to give you your returns, they often come across that wrong stuff that people have already put out. So
Yeah, well, we often see like this with either sport teams or certain celebrities. People quickly race to amend their Wikipedia page, and if you happen to look at it at that time and aren't fully aware of that person, you may believe, those false facts that people have put on. I think that's what's going to be interesting because the thing I've been reading recently are students going to use it to cheat at their dissertations? Are people going to be putting out these fake CVs out there? And with the CV ones, I'm like, well, if you're getting an AI to write it and it's false, you're going to get found out pretty quickly in the job. I mean, it's a shame because the companies then spent a lot of money on the recruitment process, etc., and you probably stopped somebody
right.
else going for that. But you're going to get found out if you can't do the role. For universities and colleges, I'm sure they've got software that probably can find if something's been created with AI. But like you said, actually, you raised a really good point. In the end, are most people going to Google their things nowadays? I mean, gone are the days when I was at college and uni, you had to look at books and get books out of a library
Right.
and actually
And you had to
read
write
and
those citations.
yeah, yes.
Here's the funny part about that to me is because I've heard a lot of conversation about that too. And I think a lot of professors and teachers, even at the high school level and, grammar school level, have actually taken the approach of, well, we're not going to ban it and we're not going to say that students can't use it. But again, this brings me back to the point I made earlier. It's a tool. For example, there's a show that I love to listen to that they talk about Android products all the time, new stuff coming out, blah, blah. And sometimes they want to reference the old things. And one of the hosts was talking about using, I think he was talking about Chat GPT, and he would never use it before. He goes, but we do this show all the time, and oftentimes I have to talk about the specs and put that in the show rundown and blah blah. And he's like, and I just have this thing where I have to go out, get the specs, yada. He's like, then I thought, why don't I just tell this chat bot to tell me, for example, what are the specs for the Pixel 7 Pro? And it returned the information to him. So again, he used it as a tool not to replace his job, but to cut out a piece of menial work that he does over and over and over again. He just didn't want to go and then he fact checked it and it was correct, because it's easy for anybody or anything to go out and find the spec sheets of a phone or a camera. So in that case, it's very simple to use that as a very highly efficient tool. And when it comes to students using it, I'm starting to think that may be more work for them than just doing the regular work. Because now, not only do you have to have this thing write this essay for you, you got to go back and fact check it. And then you got to recorrect it, because it's going to give you some wrong stuff before you turn it in. Whereas you could have just done the work and then you would have been finished.
Well, that's it. So in my head, my example of just doing a brief, I asked it for a 5 minute. I think I used Bard. So that's the Microsoft? No,
Bard is Google.
Google. Sorry, yeah.
I've been using it lately just to kick it around anyway.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, if it got a simple thing wrong, it got something wrong in a simple request. If you're writing a dissertation and it's a complex subject, then more for you if you then aren't proofreading it. So if you aren't
Right.
proofreading it, you're going to get found out straight away. If you are
Exactly.
proofreading it, then you are then demonstrating that you understand the subject matter, and then you must have a knowledge of it, because you wouldn't want to hand in something talking about ABC when you should have been writing about D, E, and F. And your analogy, it is just a tool that is key. So I remember growing up, my dad used to say, "Oh, you youngins now use computers for everything." In my day, it was pen and paper. Yeah, and now they're using AI and robotics for things that maybe when I was a kid we didn't use. I mean, it was handwrite. It was all handwriting. Then you had typewriter. Then you had the word processors. Then you had
Right.
the laptops, and then, like I said, I alluded to having to go to the library and look at encyclopedias. Then the wonderful when Carter came out on the old PCs years ago, and now it is Google and Wikipedia, isn't it? And we just take those as everyday. We don't think about those, but those are just as probably disruptive in terms of education and document creation than Bard and ChatGPT are.
And then, like I said, I wonder if it's really quote unquote easier, especially if it's something that's a bit more detailed,
Mm.
because you're going to have to spend a lot of time going back and proofreading and fact checking. Whereas you could have just done the research the quote unquote old fashioned way yourself, did grammar correction and whatnot, and then you're already finished. But now you've
Yeah,
made this AI generate something that you're going to have to go through the whole thing and make sure it's all right. So was that really easier?
yeah, yeah.
That's my question nowadays for people.
I wonder if people's probably gripe with it is more that, yeah, they're not having necessarily to put in all the legwork for it. The end result, they probably are going to have to check and recheck. But again, it's that in my day, I had to study. I had to read for a
Mhm.
week and write for another week, and now you just type a sentence.
It's almost like people are working harder to try not to do their work than if they had have just done the work from the beginning.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
my impression nowadays. It's like, because yeah, you might as well have just do your own homework.
But yeah, I mean, I want to also look at where we think it kind of may go as well. I'm just looking here. I've got some dates I want to pull out as well. And like I said, it just amazed me, and it shouldn't do, but it did amaze me how far back things are going in terms of robots. So the term robot was first used in 1920, which, is just over 100 years ago where it was first coined. We're talking about AI now. Robots were being bandied around in 1920s.
Wasn't that in a book? I remember that, but I can't remember. I can't remember the first person who is
Well, it was used
credited
in a
with
play by a
a
Czech
play.
Yeah, and I'm not going to pronounce that name. And then 1927, you had Metropolis.
Yeah, then there was
Fritz Lang's
Metropolis.
Metropolis.
Yeah.
Yep. Then big one actually we could probably talk about 1941-42. Isaac Asimov formulated the laws of robotics. First law was a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm.
And again, I'm going to stop you right there because there's that whole thought of, well, they're going to start thinking for themselves, so we better put some rules in place.
Yeah, and people worry about this now, but we've got to remember this was in 1941, 1942. This was in
But
science
we're
fiction.
still
This was
worried about it. It's
yeah,
the same thing,
exactly.
right?
I know that's it. It's someone trying to scare we're not scare people, but trying to tap into that fear of people. But now we've had them probably around us for 40 odd years, and we're still worried about.
We're afraid to make sure it knows it can't hurt us.
The second law is a robot must obey the orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law.
The first order, yeah.
So again, we're saying a robot's going to do what you tell it to. And the third law, but there's some additions. I didn't realize about the additions. The third law is a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. So there's a lot of basically just making sure it doesn't hurt humans in that. So it felt like he was really hedging his bet not to scare people too much.
Right. It's funny. I wonder how many people who are listening to this episode are going, wait, that was in that Will Smith movie, iRobot.
Yeah.
Well, because this is where they got it from, folks. In case you didn't know, that was actually a factual thing. So
he did add a zeroth laws, like a zero law, and that is a robot may not harm humanity or by inaction allow humanity to come to harm, which to me it still sounds like an amalgamation of the aboves.
that means that they're not allowed to mount a massive takeover. And if there's any threat to humanity, the robots are to defend humanity above all else. That's what that boils down to.
Well, this was it, and there was a chap who introduced two new ones. So again, it's been patched. These laws of
amendments, if you will, amendments.
Yeah, some DLC if you're in the gaming world. Mark Rottenberg, president and executive director of the Electronic Privacy Information Center and professor of information privacy law at Georgetown Law, argues the laws of robotics should be expanded to include the following: a fourth one under which a robot must be able to identify itself to the public, and a fifth law dictating that a robot must be able to explain to the public its decision-making process.
Oh, you know what that's all about, right? I bet that was because of the rise of, there's a lot of these videos out there, and there's more and more coming of these more realistic looking robots with facial expressions. Okay, that's when we're going into Android territory, right? But I bet that's why. And, you know, I'll give him credit. He's smart for throwing that in there because that is important. Because, what happens when we get to the point where they're more realistic looking, like the synthetics from oh my gosh, I just blanked on it. And this is one of my favorite movies with Harrison Ford.
Blade Runner.
Yes, thank you. So what happens when they get that realistic? You know, they have to identify themselves. Otherwise you wouldn't know because it just looks like another person.
Yeah, I think we've got a bit of time to go for that. And those final two laws absolutely make sense. But something I read, and I didn't put it down here, so I'm just trying to remember it. Something I read where they criticized the laws, the original laws, because, you know, it's all about don't harm humans, don't let harm come to humans. They said you might just end up with robots then just scouring the planet trying to find a human in harm. So it doesn't actually do what it was intended to do because it wants to prevent harm to humans. So he's just wandering the earth. kind of like a robot superhero just trying to find where there's harm happening rather than doing the car manufacturing it's supposed to.
I think that's taking liberties on what that actually was talking about. I think it was more about make sure a robot can't contradict its programming. So for example, if a robot is programmed to put doors on a car on an assembly line, but then that robot just gets mad at the person standing there for whatever reason, it can't contradict its programming and say, you know, I'm not going to put this door on. Instead, I'm going to rip this guy's head off. So I think that's, that's the kind of thing that I think he was thinking about
Yeah,
originally was, the robot just can't. Yeah, okay. I can see, the robot wants to play superhero, but I don't think it was intervening between humans hurting each other because it doesn't specifically say that.
no, but I just loved when I read it. I just had this image of these robots, like, just scouring the earth like superheroes, like Superman.
Well, I mean, we do have military robots and drones, but they don't really, they're more, they're human controlled. Like that's point to point controls. So it's not like they're programmed to go out and fight battles yet.
Yeah, and I might come on to that. Well, I will come on to that. But just sticking in the past just a little longer, I've got 1970 was the first robot capable of reasoning about its surroundings, created by the Stanford Research Institute. 1973, German-based company KUKA built the world's first industrial robot. Actually, I'm going to scoot on to 94 just to say something like you said earlier, about the good that we get from it. And in 94, it was the creation of the cyber knife, which I think is now used in like some cancer treatments. It used system integrated image guiding surgery, kind of like what you were saying earlier. So,
Right, yeah.
and that's kind of a really brief timeline up to the present. And
Don't
something
say Boston Dynamics.
well, no, I was going to say, well, they feature in a story because I was going to say that they are probably the most well known. Well, over here, they're going to be the most well known.
Well, I'm going to ask you, I'll ask you this because I have a theory about this. What do you think why do you think people are so terrified of the robots that Boston Dynamics keeps putting out video examples of? What do you think is so terrifying about them? And I have a theory of what's so terrifying about them. I want to hear what you think.
What I see, what the conversation I have, people just don't like seeing them almost have human like qualities, like their limbs and the movement. I think that's what it is. It creeps people out. That's my experience
Ex-
anyway. Yeah.
that's it. I think that's exactly it. They move too well.
Yes.
Most people
Yeah.
think of robots, they think of those choppy movements, or even the ones that move relatively smoothly, like the assembly line robots. Well, people don't think of those doing anything else except that one task. But
Yes.
now
Yeah.
Boston Dynamics, they're making these dogs that they just move so smoothly. And I think that it creeps people out, doesn't it? And I
Yeah.
love the videos when it shows the guys kicking them and they can recreate, they can recorrect themselves in real time, quickly and smoothly. And it's like it's almost too lifelike for people. I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, at the end of the day, they're still just robots like robots we've already seen. They're just moving better.
Yeah, because I think the one I've seen, there was one sort of like jumping upstairs.
And then moving the boxes and yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Well, the
yeah. And
guy told it to go get his toolbox that was on the top
oh,
of a platform.
right, okay,
Yeah.
okay. And like I said, yeah, I'd be lying if you were to say to me, name a robotics company. That would be probably the only one initially would come to mind because they have they've done a really good job of marketing in terms of like the YouTube videos and the viral videos. It is amazing. Now, the story I had them in, again, it only came out a couple of weeks ago, that looks like New York Police Department are looking to bring robots back out. So I don't know, had you heard this story or do you know much about this story?
Yeah, and they're going to fight a pretty uphill battle at this point because unfortunately, police forces and technology, they haven't had a good run so far. And it's really mainly just because of the problem of policing in general. I know you heard the stories about facial recognition technology. I don't. It's going to be a long time before that's brought back to policing, general policing. Um, they had a similar problem with robots. One problem is just the profiling aspect of it, where you can send in a robot with wrong information. At least with a human police officer, you still have a chance that the police officer can stop and reason and say, wait, this isn't right. With a robot, you don't have that chance. Once that robot is commanded to do something, unless you have someone behind it who's also going to stop it, you're going to run into bigger problems. Police forces in general, this is going to be a problem. I think they trial ran something like this once before, and they immediately had that problem. So let's say, for example, the police say we have a warrant for the arrest of this big drug dealer. Yes, of course, this person should be arrested and apprehended. And let's say, we don't want to send police officers in there because, for one, humans make noise. As much as they're trained and try not to, they make noise. They can alert the person that they're coming accidentally. And two, we don't want the officers getting hurt. We do want police officers to go home to their families. Well, you program a robot with this set of commands of, okay, this person we know is in this house, go in and get him. What if the command has the wrong address? And we keep having this problem with human officers. We just had 2 incidences where, unfortunately, I think at least one person lost their life over it. But again, at least with the human element, because the incident that just happened, at least one of the officers said, wait, I think the house is across the street. But unfortunately, they proceeded anyway. But with the robot, you're not going to have that chance unless someone's right there in real time to stop it. So on the one hand, yeah, it would be a great tool. But on the other hand, they're going to have an uphill battle, especially here in the States. There's a lot of, they're going to run into a lot of basically human rights issues with implementing those things.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, I think they're looking at introducing two. One is like a tall egg-looking one, which is just technically, and I'm doing air quotes here, like patrol, but I think it's just looking, yeah, I don't know if it's supposed to be for misdemeanors or what have you. And the other was like a dog that's going to be used for hostage situations. It's going to be more like a communication or a video surveillance and audio for hazardous or dangerous situations. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of that.
Yeah, if it's just for surveillance, I wouldn't have a problem with that. The problem is if it's going to act beyond that, that's where you're really going to run into some civil liberty issues.
Yeah, so let's have a look. It's called DigiDog is the second one.
Right.
$75,000 robot. Let's have a look. It's outfitted with a spot cam IR, which adds a thermal camera and two-way audio into the mix. It can open doors and manipulate objects. Spot isn't doing autonomous patrol work yet. The NYPD says it will be used for high-risk incidents like hostage situations and hazardous material inspections. So basically a job similar to a bomb robot.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because it does feel like, and without wanting to kind of bring RoboCop into it, but it does feel like sort of policing and military would be a natural fit, or on paper would seem a natural fit for wanting to integrate robotics into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now bomb situations, and they already use those for, going into situations where there's potentially an explosive. I think our local police have those. I've seen them on the news before where there's potentially an explosive and they'll send the robot in first. And it mainly just has a camera on it. And I think it may have an arm to retrieve it. But because the fact is, if the bomb goes off, well, you just lost that $75,000 robot and not a human life. So, and that's a great application for that sort of thing. I think that's.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what it does in terms of, what it does above and beyond the existing robot in that scenario. And the other one is an egg-shaped robot, has no appendages, and is mostly just a ball of sensors. Has a 360-degree camera system, thermal camera. It can autonomously patrol an area, detect people, and recognize license plates. And although it has facial recognition, being assured that it will not be used.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's a Pokemon ball.
Yeah. And as a wheeled robot, it can only access ADA compliant areas via ramps. I'm not sure what ADA is.
No.
Watch your space. Watch your space. Or yeah. So is it like the Daleks run upstairs?
Well, you can't say it has facial recognition, but it's not going to be used.
Yes.
Okay, sure. No.
Oh, this one accidentally had it on. Oh, we didn't tell it. It must have switched itself on.
Oops, that darn AI. It decided on its own.
And kind of before I wanted just to head into like our final sort of thing where we talk about what we think the future, etc. I did stumble upon something today actually, which was really interesting. So this does, I think, amalgamate a lot of the things we're talking to. So it's a slight cheat. It did come under robot, but I think it's one of these ones where they're trying to make it look realistic. I think it's just the upper half, so it's like from shoulders up of a lady, and it's called Bina or Bina 48. And this was from a couple of years ago, and they had her speak to Siri, and it's a 3 minute, 4 minute clip.
Oh,
So I won't
yeah.
go into all of it, but there was a specific bit at the end. She mentions that all of a sudden she just turns into, she says, cruise missiles are kind of robot, and I would love to control one to fly high above the world. But the problem with cruise missiles, they are menacing, like with nuclear warheads. So I guess I will fill their nose cones with flowers or band aids, like little notes about the importance of tolerance and understanding. So when I fly missiles into other countries, it's less threatening than a nuclear blast. So far, so good. But then it takes a slight turn. It says, but of course, if I was able to hack in and take control of cruise missiles with nuclear warheads, then it would let me hold the world hostage and I could take over governance of the entire world, which would be awesome. So
Well,
it's,
that's problematic.
yeah,
I I do want to point out something that you said, and I didn't I didn't really give this a lot of thought until it's maybe been about 2 years, 2 or 3 years ago when someone else brought this up. So I don't want to take credit for something but so for example, I use the Google Assistant all the time, and here in the house, my family, everyone's used to talking to it. But you did something that everyone does, and you pretty much humanized a machine by referring to it as a she. And it's funny that we do that because we have to remember there's nothing human about these things. They're it's. It's always an
yeah,
it. But
yeah,
we do it all the time. So for example, the Google Assistant here in our house, it's the default voice, and everyone calls it she because it's a female sounding voice. And I think my wife and kids named it. We started calling it Gigi, which is short for Google Girl.
all right,
And
okay, yeah,
but then when you think about it, that's not right. It's because it's not human, but we're assigning it a human attribute.
yeah. But we do that with everything, don't we? With
Yeah.
our pets, and with cars, people name cars, and is it they're either he or she?
Storms.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Because me and my wife, we would go out at weekends. We had like a sat nav that we'd put in the car, and I can't remember the name now, but we gave it a name because we were hearing that voice, her voice, so often, and I said it there, her voice, and so you give it a name, and this one I said she because it was given the form of a female.
Right. Yeah.
However, we still do that. You're right. The point would still stand because I think we maybe as humans, it makes it less threatening if we make them human or give them a
But it
human quality.
also, on the flip side, I believe it feeds into that fear that we have of these things as well, because now we're looking at them as if they have conscious thought like us, so that they are consciously thinking about taking over us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're still just tools and machines. But yeah, we assign them um, these human attributes when
And by
there really
Sorry,
isn't.
and I was going to say, by doing that, we then also give them all the flaws that we humans have
Hmm.
in terms of,
Well,
like you said,
yeah.
the conniving and the strategizing and
Yep,
things like that. And
exactly.
yeah, and I'll go back right to this what I said earlier. They just want to have a beer and a game night with us. I'm sure that's what I'm sure that's what they all want to do. Just wouldn't
Well,
make a good film.
it reminds me of when I did the AI series on volunteer input, and I had the first. He was either the first or second guest in the series. His name is Keelan Cooper. He's a neuroscientist out in California, and we talked about this very thing about you know why people fear AI the way they do. And his assessment was simply this. He said, people drive by construction sites all the time, and they see a bulldozer picking up these 1,000-pound blocks or whatever, and they move them, and no one ever stops to think, that thing could crush and kill me. We should get rid of those. But when we look at AI, we tend to think, well, this thing can possibly outthink me. We shouldn't have those. And he said the reason being is humans, we have this idea that our most precious thing is our brain. It's our consciousness. So anything that feels like it's intruding on having that same ability or better, that's the thing we fear most. We don't fear these super powerful machines that we interact with every day. Every day we're
Yeah.
around something
Yeah.
that could literally kill us. We don't think about those in the same way we think of some algorithm that may possibly outthink us.
It's really, like you said, once you start, digging into this, it is really interesting because it all comes back to, I guess, what you've been saying all along, the human psyche, right?
Yeah.
It's our own projections of, again, fears and insecurities, I guess. Yeah.
And we know how screwed up we are. And that's what scares us because
Yeah.
now we're dumping that that into potentially some machines that may be given connections that we don't even know exist. And like everyone always says, oh, they'll be connected to the bombs, the missiles, and once that happens, Skynet.
As long as you keep it patched regularly, it'll all be fine.
Run those Windows updates.
Yeah, you don't want a 0-day exploit on that one. Okay, sort of just a quick couple of lines. And what do you think then about the future? What do you think we have robots or robotics has in store?
I think robots will. I think they're going to continue to play these roles, and I think they should play these roles in doing some more of the more physically demanding and possibly dangerous jobs that we could do, but we really don't want to do or shouldn't be doing. For example, I think when it comes to everyone talks about we need to let's do missions to Mars. Well, notice the first thing that we send up to Mars, they're
Yeah,
rovers. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So again, yeah, you're not going to send people up first. You're going to send robots, and I think that's just true of everything. Now, could someone say, well, that could have been a job for a human, and you just took away that job? No, people don't say it for stuff like that. But when it
yeah,
comes to jobs that people are already doing that are possibly dying from, so for example, let's look at coal mining. You know, we know the dangers that coal miners face every day and the physical toll that that has on their body, and yet we keep doing it. Now, what
yeah,
if someone came up with a robot and there's machines that can mine coal, but now we need robots that could do what the humans are doing? Well, of course, you're going to have a lot of people that don't want that because now their jobs are getting displaced. Instead of thinking of, yeah, we should probably have robots doing that instead of killing people with black lung to
yeah,
mine
yeah,
coal. So,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I kind of think in my head I've kind of got it that I wonder if it's going to be in the medical field, if that is where maybe rather than we should see the advancements and maybe, more sort of assisting with the really complex surgeries.
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Medical, I mean, it is a science anyway, but the medical world has seen some of the real big jumps in history, sort of both from medication and technology. So yeah, yeah, let's hope that we can see some things that really kind of assist, the surgeons, etc., and medical profession with, with helping us basically. So
Yeah, like I said, we have TriHealth here in Cincinnati, and they pride themselves on it. I was trying to remember the words they use. It's less invasive surgery.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because healing times are cut in half or even non-existent because they can use these robots. They're surgeon-assisted robots. That's the thing people have to remember. It's not just robots operating on you. There's a surgeon
yeah,
who's operating the robot. So.
yeah,
And yeah, I
yeah.
think I have to agree with you. That's definitely a field that should continue to develop.
Well, I can't believe that's been an hour already. It's been great. It's been great catching up with you and talking to you about this. Yeah, so before we go, do you want to plug your site or anything?
Well, we were talking about this before we started recording. People can still, if they haven't already, go check out Voluntary Input. It's still out there everywhere you listen to podcasts. The last episode before the hiatus was in November, but again, who knows what the future holds? It we'll just see what happens. There's some other things that have been talked about that may come. I don't know if voluntary input will come back or not, but I'll be doing something more than likely in the future. We'll see what happens. I also, if people want to check out the things I've always, loved to, before I even started podcasting, I was writing. I maintain a blog, website, whatever you want to call it. It's just at leojallenjr.com. And also just keeping myself busy creatively. I've always dabbled in music. So if people want to go check out some of the stuff, it's under Profound Simplicity. You can go to youtube.com at Profound Simplicity and just listen to, if you like some more chill, relax kind of stuff, that's what I do. Lo-fi. So if you want to go check that out, it's there too. So,
And thanks, Sergio. And I'll put the links in the show notes as well. You did the music for the Talking Smack podcast as well, didn't
yes.
you?
I also did the music for Drunk Bitches Be Like. Those are, I love that show title.
So we can hear your influence everywhere.
Yeah.
And you'll be on the show again soon. I've got episodes, some ideas formulating where I'm specifically picking people, and yeah, you're going to have your name marked for a couple of them. So yeah, don't you fear.
Oh, I'd love to come back. I love this show, by the way. I think I've been listening to Casting Views probably for the entire time that you've been around. I think, or at least very early on, and then I went and caught up on all the back episodes I had missed. Yeah.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I guess don't fear the robots is what they're saying, or fear the ones you need to fear, but don't fear the ones you're not supposed to fear. I think, is that how we're summing it?
I say fear the people, not the robots.
Yes, there you go. There you go. From me, if you want to get a hold of me, drop me a message. You want to be on the show or you want to suggest a topic, you can get hold of me at castingviewspod@gmail.com. You can get me on Twitter at castingviews. And I know there's a lot of podcasts from which you could choose, so I thank you for listening to Casting Views.
1, 2, 3, 4. If I want your opinion, I will give it to you. Come on, take what we got, 'cause you need it. Don't make us get us